So yeah, I'm Jamie, and I'm one of the developer advocates at GraphCMS. I work on the dev relations team to really help customers get to grips and get going with GraphQL and a content management system. And one of the areas that we speak to and help customers get involved with is search. I'm just checking the chat while we get going. Okay, so the web is constantly evolving and has been for many years now. We've seen content being distributed across many different devices, such as Alexa, Google Homes, and many other devices for sound, voice, and whatever else. So this is evolved, and the way that we deal with content, the way that we work on the web, has completely been revolutionized by all of the different tools and APIs that are available, and especially using tools like Algolia make working with the web, I think, a lot easier today. So we're going to dive into all of that and all that fun stuff. But first of all, I just kind of want to cover the JAMstack and where that really fits in and how you can use search with the JAMstack. So like I mentioned before, the web has revolutionized and the stack is forever evolving. The stack today, this is a diagram that we put together that kind of encompasses a lot of the tools that our customers use. Whether it be on the front end, they're using Vue, React, Angular, or any other front end framework, there's often a mix of other services in the stack that kind of make up and deliver the solutions that we want to kind of present to our customers. So whether that is stored on a CDN, or whether you call out to serverless functions to handle payment, or whether you use Google to track events or any other of the services. And then everything from authorization, sourcing content, creating e-commerce experience and sourcing content from any providers. All of this is kind of brought together and in a term that I like to call the content mesh. That is just a way to kind of bring all these tools together. And the JAMstack really gives you the control to use all of these services and use the best services that are available in the industry to kind of deliver the results you need. So we've kind of gone from one to become a full stack developer to one to become a JAMstack developer, and I think it's a nicer experience to be able to work with all of the tools you use, and working with JAMstack is really nice. So it's no longer about being a full stack developer, but it's more about being the JAMstack developer. And we're going to kind of take a look at the JAMstack now and what that is and how that works with search. So JAMstack is a term it's been around for maybe 10 plus years now, certainly the technology. And then kind of the term was coined by one of the continuous deployment services, and it kind of just encompasses JavaScript, APIs, and markup. That's the JAM. So if you're used to using things like the LAMP stack or the MAMP stack or any of the other stacks, the JAM stack is literally just being able to use JavaScript frameworks or JavaScript in general with APIs and throwing some markup together to create an output. And that is the JAMstack ultimately. But there's a lot of benefits to using all of the tools that are available for JAMstack developers. We'll obviously explore those. Some of the reasons to love the JAMstack is it really decouples the front end from the back end. And I think this is a quote, or certainly a benefit removed from the JAMstack website, is it decouples the front end from the back end. So when you're creating the front end, you really don't have to worry about kind of running this server to, create and access all of the data on the server. You can just use front end technologies, and with APIs, you can use SDKs and all of the other helpful things to kind of just build the front end and get going really fast. A lot of the heavy lifting is also done at build time. So if you opt in to use a static site generator, such as Gatsby, Hugo, ViewPress, any of the other popular ones, you can get up and running and you can offset any of the kind of requests that are required to build pages to be done at build time. So then they are then stored and saved on the server or the CDN and then delivered to the customer. So there really isn't waiting around for a page to access the database and return it. And the same can't be said with search. Obviously, search does involve kind of querying data from a database of some sort. And in this case, Algolia make that really, really simple and really, really fast as well to get that data. But obviously, we can build the search pages and we can build the search results ahead of time. And then we can kind of integrate Algolia to kind of create the rich search. And we'll dive into that as well at the end of this talk. Another benefit of the JAMstack is that it lives at the CDN, so it's as close as possible to the end user, which makes it incredibly fast. And if you are using frameworks like Gatsby, for example, there's a lot of tools that they have in their tool chest to allow you to kind of really optimize the way images are kind of rendered to users as well. So it can kind of create a blurred effect. So when you load the page, those images are kind of enhanced as they're downloaded, and it makes and takes advantages of a lot of the new HTML5 spec and all of the properties in there. So delivering images is a great thing with static site generators as well, is you can often build all of the different assets that are required for devices ahead of time, or screen resolutions ahead of time, and then the browser kind of only requests what it needs or what it can show. All of this, like I say, it kind of bundles up into faster performance, and I think faster development as well. Being able to work with the JAMstack and work with the tools that I know and I love, kind of bring them all together to build the product for my customer, that is just a really nice experience. It makes it super fast to develop, and I can use all of the tools that I trust, which if you're using one of the older stacks that kind of prescribe a solution to you, you kind of just sometimes cut corners, or you kind of bake in too much functionality that really isn't required, and you don't get the best out of it at the end of the day. You kind of just limit to what the out-of-box solution prescribes you to do. Then we have atomic or custom deployment. With most of the hosts, we'll call them. A lot of these CDN tools and build systems allow you to publish that content to a CDN, and it lives forever, or until you delete the bucket or whatever. So when you're creating deployments, whether it is in a Git workflow, anything you do or create a pull request for will live on an atomic URL that is forever available for your team to check, approve, and eventually get merged. That can be then revisited 6 months down the line. If you want, that deployment will always be there. So that's really nice as well. And because of the likes of using the Git workflow or using any of the Git integrations with these cloud providers, it makes it really easy to deploy those changes. So once a Git pull request is merged, then it is deployed to the web. It's in production. There's no let's not deploy on a Friday. If all of the tests passed in your CI, then that deployment will be automatic, which is really nice, and it's really fun to work with. And it's not the JAMstack, although it's JavaScript, part of the JAMstack, it's not tied to a specific framework. So there's no forcing to use Gatsby or React like I've mentioned, because they are tools that I use. I also use Next.js, and I can kind of choose which one I want to use. But also if a client wishes to use Vue or Angular or any of the others, you can do that as well. It's not tied to any framework. And a lot of these frameworks take care of all of the heavy lifting with talking to APIs in the format of using Gatsby plugins or using Next to kind of statically build pages and fetch data at the build or within those JavaScript files. And if you've done any development with Vue, you'll notice how in one file you can define the styles, or you can define the API requests or the presentation layer. That can all be done. And that is nice because I can work in the workflow that I use and the tools that I enjoy, and just work with the JAMstack. Lastly, there is no service to run or manage. I think we've said that with the cloud providers. It's all kind of taken care of for us. We don't have to worry about that. That can be left to somebody else. And as a front-end developer myself, all I can do is worry about building the experience for the user. And then I think all of this ultimately leads to a greater developer experience. So where does the JAMstack fit in all of this? So we've said these are the great reasons for loving the JAMstack. Where does the JAMstack fit in the real world? Who would even consider using the JAMstack, or even, just who would use this? For marketing sites, I think this is a no-brainer. It means pages are delivered ultimately in a really fast way by being at the CDN edge closest to the customer. You can build those marketing sites and use all those static site generators and build those pages ahead of time, and create marketing sites is a great use case for adopting the JAMstack. Any user UIs or dashboards that you may have in your company, building these in a JAMstack way, using the frameworks and all of the APIs that are available in the static site generators, that can be done as well. A lot of these static site generators actually add a layer of kind of dynamic element to those. So in the case of Gatsby, for example, which I'll show an example of after this slide, is we mount these built pages that are built and stored at the CDN, but then those pages are rehydrated into a fully working React app. So if you have a page such as a login screen that could be statically built, but a dashboard contains dynamic data, and yes, the overall structure could be statically built, you can inject the dynamic parts to that page, and then those components can make external API requests. So that's, again, another use case of using the JAMstack. Any static sites you have, if it's just a static page that you want to throw up online, then that's fairly straightforward in the JAMstack. E-commerce is another thing which is really popular. Hotels, travel sites, and the list goes on with what you can build and continue to build. So we mentioned e-commerce. E-commerce is something we're going to take a deep dive into, and I had a look for some I did some research, and one of the things we've seen from Amazon, maybe 10 plus years ago, is that for every 100 milliseconds of latency, it costs in about 1% of sales, which is kind of staggering, really. So it's important that a lot of front end developers and companies building any type of website or application that delivers to the end user, that data needs to be built super fast. And with search, we see the likes of Algolia, who have really made that they've revolutionized search on the web, I believe, on how you can query and kind of search for that data. So let's dive into e-commerce a little bit more and see where that fits. Algolia have a great presentation for anyone wanting to learn more about how that fits and all of the benefits of using Algolia with the with the JAMstack and with the web. It's a really good presentation if you're interested to learn more about Algolia and e-commerce. So I mentioned the JAMstack and e-commerce, and a few years ago, e-commerce and JAMstack were a term really that weren't kind of used together. It was really confusing how you build a static shopping site. How can someone order things on a website that is statically built? Well, like I mentioned before, you can build static pages and then you can rehydrate them into a Vue or a Gatsby or Angular or whatever else. Those can be rehydrated and users can interact with them in real time. So JAMstack in e-commerce, or JAMcommerce as I like to call this by. And going back to the 2020 stack, let's take a look at the kind of the e-commerce aspect of working on the JAMstack and where that fits in with Algolia. So a quick case study here. Close that window. Quick case study here. This will be using a variety of different services. And again, this is the content mesh all working together. This is being able to use tools like Gatsby to source data from other tools and bring those all together. So we are using Algolia for search, Commerce.js for e-commerce, GraphCMS for enhancing and creating marketing pages on the product site as well. We're then maybe delivering emails to customers to say their orders have been successful with SendGrid. We're deploying to Netlify, building the site with Gatsby, and all of that uses GraphQL. So there's a lot of things going on here. And in this specific case study that I built with a colleague is we built a swag store and we really try to limit the amount of services we used, but we wanted to use the best services in the industry for each of their areas. So this is a swag store that we built. It's built with Gatsby and it uses all of those services. We have a product grid. All these products are sourced from a e-commerce API, Commerce.js, and then we're able to, when we go on those pages, add to cart, and then all of that cart logic is handled by an external provider, Commerce.js. Then we can create reviews on the website, and the e-commerce API, it doesn't know anything about reviewing products. That's not part of its domain. It doesn't really care about it because the way that we present reviews can be unique to each of us. So with GraphCMS, I'm able to create a custom schema for really anything I want. So we create a product schema inside of GraphCMS, and then we're able to enhance all of the data on this page. So you'll see in the top right, we have a toggle to change between locales, for example. So all of the products that you see here in the e-commerce API, they're just in English. But with GraphCMS, we're able to use the localization API to change and add different locales and wording for each language we have. So if we wanted to support German, Italian, French, etc., we can add all of that content in the content management system. And then when someone is browsing the website, the framework can then present whichever language they choose to. So I think that's really nice. And that's one of the benefits of using a system like GraphCMS is you can create any kind of data model you want, and then you can enhance data from other providers. That's exactly what we're doing here. And I really, really love this experience with working on the JAMstack. So these are the services that we use in the case study. Commerce.js is handling our core product PIM and any of the cart and checkout. Then we have GraphCMS for our content management system. And again, that allows us to maybe add additional images to our product model, or add any localization, or attach other models such as reviews and then categories, collections, anything you can think of in a e-commerce world. We can do that with GraphCMS by kind of just exposing this ready to go GraphQL API. Lastly, we have the search API, and it's not something I've shown yet. So in that example yesterday, I was thinking, how can we add Algolia to that? And that's something we did, and something I'll show. And it speaks volumes with how easy that was. So lastly, we wanted to use Algolia as our search API and make that super fast. So this is the JAMstack all at work. I've kind of explained that in depth with what's going on and how kind of all of those work together to create these experiences. We have commerce, content, and then we have that build step. Then we have that search, and then we have deploy. So what we have at the build step here is it sources content from both of our APIs, our commerce and our content management system. And then we also have this deployment. So it sources all the data, it builds the static pages for our products, and then it deploys them to Netlify in this example. It also at build will sync with Algolia, and it syncs all of the product information with an Algolia index. Then that is then searchable on the front end. So one way to kind of sync data in the JAMstack with Algolia is when data changes in an external system. So in the event of Commerce.js updating or adding a new product, that will then trigger a webhook from Commerce.js to a custom Lambda that I have. And that could be in pretty much any of the SDKs that Algolia have available. Could be Scala, could be Node, could be Go. Anything we choose to do, all of that can work via webhooks. And that's what I like to think as kind of an event-driven system. We can then store all of these. If content is deleted or updated, we could store those in a queue with Amazon SQS, and we could then execute those jobs, and then we could retry those jobs if there's any failures. So that's really nice. I have full control over what goes into Algolia and what is updated in Algolia, and ultimately, if anything is removed, what comes out of Algolia. We can also sync on deploy. So this is a code-heavy screen, so apologies if nobody's familiar with JavaScript, but essentially this is the Gatsby ecosystem at work here. We have a Gatsby plugin. We're defining our properties for our Algolia configuration, and then how we can query and transform that data. So this transformer will take in the Commerce.js product. In this case, it's called check product. It grabs the source of any of the media and any of the variants for that product. It will then grab category collections and any reviews that's on that product as well. And then it is able to return all of that and pass it down into the Algolia. It kind of maps all of this to Algolia and is executed and then synced with Algolia at deployment. So when you update a new product in your inventory, that will trigger a webhook to redeploy the website. And in part of that, it will run this code to go and sync to Algolia. So at the point of deployment, or at the point of each deployment, Algolia has the most up-to-date information about what is available in your system. And this also works if you sell a product or a product goes out off sale. A product may be sold out and you don't want users to be able to search for that product anymore, or you would like to change the experience of a product is sold out. It could kick them into a pre-sale screen or a pre-order, whatever it be. We can use webhooks to kind of trigger Algolia, and just running code like this, which is fairly simple, we can run that at deploy. Now, I said with the webhooks version, which is not a deployment, but whenever anything changes, again, this is just some JavaScript code. It doesn't really matter about the code here, but ultimately, what we are looking for in this example is we're checking the event. So we're checking the event comes in from the e-commerce provider here. Is it a product has been deleted? If it has, let's remove it from Algolia. And we can import the Algolia search library from NPM, and we can call all of the functions on the client to remove, update, or delete. And we can see if the event type that comes in, if that is to create or update, it will then save that object on Algolia. And using special keys like object ID, it's able to kind of identify which of those is the modifier key and make the appropriate changes. So hopefully that code wasn't too boring. And I said earlier on, we'll explore JAMstack and the search. And kind of this is where I would like to explore now. Where there's e-commerce, there's most likely a search. Most likely you will use a search if you're looking for a specific product. But most e-commerce search sucks. Sorry to be blunt, but it does, I think. It's typically slow. You click on a drop down, it takes forever to reload. The user experience is just terrible. But it's time we can all build a better search with a tool like Algolia. And one of the things that Algolia really shines in my example is the client-side libraries that are available. The libraries, or SDKs, are available in most of the popular front-end technologies. And they mean I can integrate in the way that I want. I can build the experience that I want to build in the way that I know how to build. And all of the kinds of tools are available at my disposal, thanks to Algolia. So Algolia Instant Search is a great tool. It's pretty much ready-made components like you can see on the right. We have options to clear filters. We have any range filters. We then have the ability to kind of do facet searching as well. And like I say, most of these work with popular frameworks such as React, Vue, and even Vanilla JS. And all of this, I think, is an excellent developer experience as well. I don't have to worrying about all of the testing and the logic that's involved with writing all of these facet filters and text searches and range expanders, and so all of that. It can just be left to an awesome open source team and the Algolia team that's collaborating on this, and then I can just use as much or as little as I want in my front end stack. All of this code is completely open source as well, which is great. So you can go onto GitHub and you can file an issue. You can file a pull request if you wanted to improve or update or do anything there. And all of this can be customized as well. So Algolia ships, I think, with a simple CSS file for all of these components. But you can override those CSS components or even override the components themselves, which is just mind-blowing. I can connect my code with Algolia's instant search library and really define the behavior that each action does. So if I clicked on, I wanted products for less than $10, I can then obviously kick that to Algolia to return the updates, but I could then do something else on the page as well. I could add a callback handler to say, okay, maybe show an offer at this point, or do some obtrusive thing like that. The power's up to you as a developer to kind of create this experience. So like I said earlier, yesterday I started to consider how can we add Algolia into that swag store that we had built. And this was the diff on GitHub. The URL's here if anyone wants to kind of go and see how that was implemented. But yeah, I was surprised how little I needed to add and how much Algolia took care of to provide a search experience like this. So what we have is we have a text search that you can type any of the product name or any of the product information, and you can use Algolia to fine tune how all of those products come back. Now this is JAMstack website using the Algolia instant search that provides that dynamic feel. We can obviously use the facet search on the left here, and as you click one of those, the results will change. And all of this just really adds up to a really nice developer experience. I get to use the tools that I love and enjoy using. And if there's something else that's hot tomorrow, I can move on to using that framework. And if it's JavaScript based, I can use all of the tools that I already do and kind of just move that experience around. And because Algolia has a huge amount of SDKs or client libraries, I'm able to provide the same experience for my users across whichever device they're using. So if it's a native app on iOS or Android, there are SDKs available as well. So you can kind of emulate those experiences there. And on the web, if it's not a JavaScript framework, that you have other things as well. So hopefully that's been interesting. It's a quick deep dive into JAMstack and adding that dynamic flavor to your site with Algolia. So I'm Jamie. You can find me at both of these URLs. And I look a bit different today. But yeah, that was me before. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, let's see how many inches of hair you got after this is all over. Do
Yeah.
you want to answer any of the Q&A questions live while we're here?
Yeah, sure.
Nice one.
Okay, so there's a question. There's a question from William. What happens with e-commerce stores that have several hundreds or thousands of products at build time? Interesting. This is an interesting discussion that has happened amongst the static site generation tools, and for as long as this has been around, I think a lot of them have struggled to kind of cope with um, build tools that can process that amount of data. But I think we've seen recently the likes of Gatsby Cloud. They have a solution now that kind of detects the delta, the diff between the new output and the old output, and it can go, okay, well, we only need to kind of run the code for this change and upload that change and kind of copy everything across. Not too sure on the specifics of the technical, the behind the technical things going on there, but there are tools and there are people trying to solve this problem. Depending on how many products you have, this could go anywhere from a 30-second deployment to maybe a 3-hour deployment, depending on how many products you have. But the likes of Gatsby Cloud really is going to bring that time down to seconds again, because it's able to intelligently figure out what has changed. So hopefully that answers that one. There is another question. Hello, thanks. Do all of the APIs need to have a Gatsby source plugin to work this way? So I think this is relating to the way that we configured Algolia to build or source content. So the beauty of using an API and the JAMstack, you can use any of the tools you want. So it could be that you're using Next.js, and right inside of the file itself, you can call server-side functions. You can run server-side code that will output output whatever you've queried as well. So it's not just a Gatsby thing. But the ecosystem with Gatsby is there's a lot of configuration required, where you have to set all of these things up, and then they kind of build this GraphQL API you can query to build the front end, which is cool. Maybe just one more question. Is there any way I provide Algolia with all my products in JSON at build time instead of using lambdas, etc.? So yeah, in my example, the Gatsby plugin specifically at build time will query all of the data and then pass that on to Algolia. And that's a plugin. I don't think it's managed by Algolia, but it's community sourced. And that will get your products and add them to Algolia each time the website is built, or rebuilt whenever there's any Git merges or whatever. Again, you can use the Algolia console or even their SDK to just import data as well. So one of the fun things that I like to do before I even begin to consider writing serverless functions or any plugins to manage this data is open up the Algolia dashboard and just create an index and add in some raw JSON content. You can do that inside of the Algolia console, or I believe you can just do that with the SDK as well natively. Just add a raw array of products. I think that's the
Good
last
to
one for
go.
me.
Nice one. All right. Well, yeah, this is recorded, so we'll be sure to share
Cool.
it afterwards. You can rewatch. I'm sure Jamie will be talking at other events. Is there a way to reach you, Jamie?
Yeah, I mostly go by Notrab, which is just Barton backwards, but it confuses a lot of people. So it's just Jamie Barton, but Barton Notrab backwards on Twitter, GitHub, Dribble, wherever. You'll mostly find me there.